requires a whole perceptual apparatus for language processing. Hearing words, hearing bits of words, taking them apart, storing them. We then have a semantic level of trying to figure out what these words refer to. Some of the words refer to things in the world, like cat and mat. Some of them have relational meanings, like possessive or located at, or in relation in such a way that one is at the top of another. The child must very early on separate out these different levels of processing. While looking for meanings of words, also look for relational meanings. And the child must come equipped with some expectation that parts of words and orders of words have an overarching significance, a significance that has to do with more general categories than just the meanings of words.
Whatever the language or social situation, it seems that children adopt similar strategies to organize words and parts of words, the grammar.
Shall we pick it up and see?
But children often make mistakes. We asked Dan Slobin whether these mistakes actually indicate that they know how to work out the grammar.
Yes, let me give you a couple of examples to show how children are working both on a semantic level and on a level that's purely formal and has nothing to do with meaning. For example, in many languages, we have rules that are purely there because the language requires certain kinds of forms. For example, in Spanish, the word for bottle is botella. It ends in an a. And if you want to say a bottle, you have to say una botella. Una botella. You have an a here and an a here. Now, children seem to be sensitive to this regularity in the language because where the language doesn't match this pattern, children will impose the pattern anyway. So, for example, in Spanish, the word for flower is una flor. Notice that doesn't match this pattern. We have an a here and no a here. Children will say una flora. This is an error, but notice it's a creative error. It's not something children have imitated. In a sense, it's wrong, but it's wrong in a sense that shows that the child is right. Clearly, part of the time, children are just trying to figure out non-semantic, non-communicative, formal parts of the language.
What colour's your tree going to be? A pink tree? Gosh. Go on then, put it down.
But many grammatical endings relate to meaning, relate to fairly abstract meanings. And here we find that children interpret these meanings in a common way across languages. Let's take Russian, where the word for book is kniga. So if I say, the book is interesting, I'll simply say kniga. But if I say, pick up the book, read the book, give me the book, I'll say knigu, changing the a to an u. And the u here indicates that the book is the object. Children very early on notice this difference between a and u, and they will say both kniga and knigu. They'll use the distinction in a semantically motivated way. So they figured out that the difference has something to do with meaning.
But meaning for a child is not always what adults intended.
Why? I think she's going to eat him for a dinner.
In Russian adult speech, if you say something like, I read the book, or I see the book, you would still use the object marker because it's the book that you're acting upon. But for children, somehow reading and seeing is not a direct action. To them, acting on something is doing something with your hands, picking it up, dropping it, throwing it, manipulating it in some way. So in child speech, if they say, read me the book, or see the book, or look at the book, they don't put the object marker on. They say kniga instead of knigu. So here we have a subtle interplay between semantics and grammar. I've suggested from work I've done cross-linguistically that there's a beginning level of what I call basic child grammar, which is remarkably similar now across several dozens of different kinds of languages in very different kinds of societies.
Is there an innate mechanism for language, a basic child grammar which is gradually revised? Chanting nursery rhymes is more sophisticated than it sounds. Learning a language involves considerable expertise and understanding, all developed in the first 4 years of life.
It's perfectly apparent that in addition to the child's knowledge of the language in the detailed sense of what goes into a sentence-like structure, the child also has a very, very deep implicit knowledge of what constitutes a text, a narrative, an event structures as depicted, and how they can become dramatized, and how you forefront certain things and put things into the background. Nobody learns that through induction just from experience. scratches, and somewhere down in the genome there's also a dramatist as well as a linguist.
Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey, when down came a spider, who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet.
So that's where some of us are. Some of us are saying, what does the language acquisition device consist of, and what kinds of interaction with other human beings do you need in order to get your language acquisition abilities going?
Chomsky set us on the right track by making it clear that the child has to have some very specialized acquisition devices in order to work out a formal and abstract system like grammar. What's been added since has been attempts to relate that system to issues of semantics, of conceptual development, of communication.
I think the deepest insight about language acquisition is the insight that children are not learning a linguistic system, but that they're acquiring a means of communicating, and that we need to analyze at least the early stages of children's language as attempts at communication.
When we say the medium is the message, the medium is also something that in itself we care about. We come to love words.
Where did he go to?
It's end.
The end, is it?
Yes.
All gone.
Not all gone.
Where's he gone then?
It's not finished.